Tell me about your vision.
Thanks, Harry, for having me on. And I'm interested in talking about what my vision was for your audience. And this podcast, I think, is a good fit for it. So I taught a gender communication class for several years, over 10 years.
Mhm.
And when I first started teaching the class, the majority of the research came from a social learning perspective, a social learning background. So basically, in gender communication, the research out there pretty much emphasizes that there may be some differences between males and females, the way that they communicate and understand, but it comes primarily from the way that we learn from maybe our family members, the groups that we belong to, our friends, school, whatever else. But one of the things that stuck out to me was when I started doing research for the class was that I kept finding some of the same consistent differences in communication between men and women, boys and girls. So if there's consistent differences between them throughout the different stages of life, and people grow up in different cultures, different backgrounds, exposed to different families, then there are some consistencies beyond society itself. And what I started to look at was what are some of these other factors that contribute to it. So then I started looking into psychology, psychiatry, biology, neuroscience. And what I found was that there were consistencies in biological differences between males and females that contributed to some of these communication differences between males and females. So when I was teaching this class, I couldn't find a book that attributed or explained some of the biological reasons for gender communication differences and understanding based upon biology. So if I couldn't find one, I thought I might as well just write my own, and that's what I did. So I tried to incorporate these different types of sciences with the psychology, psychiatry, biology, and neuroscience, focusing on brain structural differences, sex hormone differences, and how does that influence these communication perception differences, the emotional differences between males and females that, again, we find every day throughout our lives, whether it's coworkers, whether it's clients or customers or large audience who we're trying to reach.
What were some of those inconsistencies and consistency that you found during your research?
So one of the things that I like to do is to start out with where does this, what are some of the beginning influences? And all communication starts out in the brain. So at conception, everyone pretty much starts out what we usually think of on the same track as female. And then after about 4 months after conception, that's when the sex hormones start to kick in and differentiate sex 4 months after conception. That's when the sex hormones start to kick in and differentiate males from females. And those sex hormones, what that does, it actually influences brain structural differences. And some of those brain structural differences that are influenced from the sex hormones are in communication areas. So just to give credibility to this, science has advanced far enough where now you can analyze a human brain and with over 90% accuracy predict if it's male or female. So there's that many structural differences between a male brain and a female brain of humans that you can analyze and predict if it's male or female. So if you have all these structural differences where you could do that type of prediction, then why is it that far of a stretch to think that we're going to communicate differently because some of those areas are responsible for communication? Also, what has come out recently in science is that functional differences as well. So doing the same task, communicating over the same topic, listening to the same whatever it is interaction. You could look at the activations of the brain and analyze it, and with over 90% accuracy, predict if it's male or female based upon the differences in the different areas that are activated and the strengths of those activations as well. So it's not only the structural differences, but the activation differences as well, doing the exact same thing, differentiate between males and females where you can predict with over 90% accuracy. So the readers, after they finish my book, should be able to identify at least 5 different areas of the brain and how that influences male and female communication differences, such as in perception, the way we understand other people, topics that we communicate about, our emotional differences, the words that we use, the interests that we have, and other areas as well. So pretty much all aspects of our lives.
Yeah. Can you give example of some of these areas where um, what you noticed, let's say about communication, um,
Okay.
that how
So,
that pertains to like, hey, this is what a male would look like, and this is what a female would look like.
okay. So I could start out generally in terms of perception, and then I could go into more specifics of maybe nonverbal communication and verbal communication as well. So we're looking at the exact same thing, but we're going to perceive it differently between males and females, perception differences. So for males, for the most part, most of the time, we focus more generally on the big picture itself and less so on the details. So more of the overall large objects itself. We tend to be better when it comes to visual and spatial abilities, and we're more likely to remember those. So maybe if it's sports or something action in a movie or whatever else. And there's a strong correlation between testosterone and spatial ability, so that makes sense. And estrogen hinders spatial ability, so that makes sense. Looking at a large number, so you have maybe a 6-digit number. Males are more likely to look at this multi-digit number holistically as one large number. Same thing if you're looking at maybe a puzzle or a large shape that's made up of individual pieces. We're more likely to look at it as one large piece together. And then also when we interact and our perception, we're much more comfortable and do much better when we look straight ahead. And there's a saying out there in biology that like to hunt eyes in front. So those males in the animal kingdom, they tend that are hunters. They tend to have their eyes in the front of their skull. Those that are the prey tend to have it on the side, and that's what females are much more comfortable with. Human females with more of the side perception when they talk to someone, maybe standing to someone's side, whereas us males, we tend to look straight ahead. And then the reverse with perception with females, that they are much more honed in on the details of objects. They have more associations between words and the details of the objects themselves, more perception with the color tones. Again, if there's a large number, 6-digit number, they're going to look at more as individual numbers put together as opposed to one large number.
Hmm.
Okay. So those are some perceptual differences. I'll stop there and then I could go into some nonverbal differences specifics as well.
Hmm. Thank you for sharing that. I think that was good enough for me to understand that. So that was
Okay.
awesome. My next
Okay.
question for you is why did you, apart from the reason like, hey, there was a book missing in this area, what
Uh-huh.
motivated you? Why did you get started on this path and write this book? Why did you go on like what? Why did you get started on all this?
Part of it was that I was frustrated with people being misinformed. And then secondly, that I saw a need out there. So we have a high divorce rate. You see a lot of conflicts, even in celebrity marriages as well. All these things as well. So I saw a need in terms of empathy. So understand from someone else's perspective. So one of the things that I go into are nonverbal communication differences between males and females, and what are some of the biological explanations as to why. Now I could go into a few details if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so for females, and this is one of the things that really stuck out to me in the research, is in the science, it's already settled as far as I'm concerned that females have much more connections across both hemispheres with their brain, and
Hmm.
us males we're much more compartmentalized. We have more connections within each hemisphere. So non-verbally, what that helps her to do is she can engage in the conversation at hand while at the same time, she could access the other area of her brain and analyze your nonverbal communication. Whereas with us males, we could do one or the other, but we're not going to understand the nonverbal communication nearly as well because we're much more compartmentalized. Another thing is that females have more mirror neurons that are activated during social interactions. So we talk about empathy and nonverbal communication, nonverbal understanding. How do you nonverbally understand someone? Is you empathize and you feel or experience what they're going through, and that's what the mirror neurons do. They activate when you see someone else's nonverbal behaviors, and it prepares your body to display those same behaviors that you see someone else doing. So if your body is preparing to do those same behaviors, what's that do? It helps you go through a similar type of emotional experience so you have a better nonverbal understanding of the other person. Also, she has more of her overall brain activated during social interactions, whereas with us males, again, being much more compartmentalized, it's usually language is on the left and emotion is on the right for us, whereas with her, she has more of the overall brain. And what's actually been found with sex hormones is that testosterone hinders social understanding of other people. And with us males, we tend to have about 20 times more testosterone, whereas with estrogen has been found to actually help social understanding. And adult females tend to have about 20 times more estrogen. So the bottom line with nonverbal understanding is that females are going to have much more cues to go off of, much more details. And one, I don't know, this is somewhat of my opinion, but one way, what I summarize it to remember it as, that sometimes us males, we may oversimplify things because we have less nonverbal cues to go off of, less details. And maybe females, sometimes they overcomplicate things, read into too much because they're going off of a bunch more information, a bunch more details.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that with us. I think that was very helpful. Um, there's not much I have to say because there's not much I know about it, but I really
So
appreciate you sharing that. Yeah,
the exact same conversation in a meeting, and you have men and women there, it's going to
yeah.
be remembered differently between the men and the women. The men
Mm,
probably much more of the topic oriented, and then the women much reading much more beyond the topic. So the vocal tones, the nonverbal behaviors, what is being said much more beyond the words themselves. The words people seated at, what's their facial expressions, all those things they're going to pick up on much more easily than what the males are. So they're going to, and also social interactions are remembered much more so by females. They have a better social memory than what us males do. So you see a lot of frustrations out there, whether it's working relationships or regular relationships, that men don't remember conversations nearly well as what women do. And there's biological reasons why.
that is intriguing thought. Now I have another thought regarding what you just mentioned. I think so.
Okay.
During this research and after writing the book, what
Mhm.
has this information helped you in your day to day life to do? Like um what changes has that brought you in your life, and has there been negative, positive changes, and what would you like to share about it?
Yeah, so I try to look at it from when I have a social interaction with someone from the other person's perspective. So if I'm talking to a male, a man, then I may emphasize much more of the big picture and the topics itself and not tie in nearly as much emotion or details or past experiences. But if I'm talking to a female or a woman, then I know that's important to her to tie in these other things as well, such as more of the emotion, more of the details, and some of the past experiences as well. Women have a much larger hippocampus, and that's responsible for language memory and relationships. So that's how they understand much of all these details together.
Mhm.
And that's one of the things that they look for also during conversations as well. So one of the things that I like to suggest is that for us males to understand when she ties in the current topic with past experiences and emotion, that she's not off topic and she's not personally attacking us. That's what makes sense to her, tying all these different individual pieces together. Like I already talked about before, she has more connections to different parts of her brain. And for women, they need to understand when we answer a question and we don't tie in much emotion at all, it doesn't mean that we don't care, or it doesn't mean that we're not interested, but it's because we're much more compartmentalized and we're focused on the topic itself. It's much more difficult for us to tie in the emotion and the topic together because we don't have those connections or as much estrogen to help us out.
Mm. Um, and how has applying this in your day-to-day life, right, changed? What
Mhm.
was the result of it?
So one of the things is I think I have a better understanding of someone else's intentions. So the intention behind what they say. So the intention, if a woman says something, then I try to read into it beyond just the words themselves or just the topic itself. Whereas before this, I would have just thought about the topic and just take that away. But now I try to think in, oh, what are some of the subtleties that she throws in the emotion behind it? That ties into the overall theme for her. Whereas with the, if I'm talking to a man, that's pretty much more natural for me, and I just pretty much take it more at face value of what's being said and much more literal. So that's one of the things that I really grew from, is to pick up or try to pick up on some of the subtleties from women's communication, and that's important to her and important to the topic.
Um, this is a little bit harder question.
Okay.
So this is what you got out of it. But now,
Yes.
what did the women or the men that you interacted to with these changes got out of it?
So I think one of the things that they got out of it was a better understanding of themselves and how they
Mm,
come across. That I think too often we always just see it from our own point of view, our own perspective, and we expect people to understand it the way that we do in the way that we communicate. So what a lot of my students, and if I do consultant work or whatever else, one of the things that they take away from it is to understand from the other person's perspective, not only when you listen to them, but also when you talk to them as well. So changing your communication to fit your audience, I think, is one of the biggest takeaways.
Thank you for being here today. I'm really happy that you tuned in to Vision Pros Live. I'm looking forward to seeing your reactions as these episodes continue to move forward. This is going to get more and more fun. We'll have more engagement as well. We'll invite people to participate in the show. And thank you for giving us your time and attention. Have an excellent time building out your vision and becoming a Vision Pro yourself.